Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this, gosh, it must be 22nd, maybe 23rd of virtual meeting of Heritage Oakville. And the way the pandemic is going, I suspect it might be a little while before we actually get to meet in person, but we're getting pretty used to this format and it seems to be working quite well for us. We have a couple of delegations for today's meeting. Because of the sort of long 4-day holiday weekend, we had to make allowances for that, and that was appropriately done to allow people to register slightly later than might have been formally required. As usual, the IT staff will manage the comings and goings. You know the drill here. You will remain muted, please, during the presentations, and when you are ready to speak, to ask questions, if you raise your hand, I will keep a speakers list going and we'll proceed as we do in an orderly manner. For those who are watching from home, who are not members of the committee and would like to have a copy of the agenda, it can be got at oakville.ca under Town Hall Agendas and Minutes. We have 4 discussion items today, and as usual, I'll remind you that we are an advisory committee. Any recommendations that we make will go to the Planning and Development Advisory Council, Development Council, for its meeting on the 2nd of May at 6:30 p.m. And as usual, anybody wishing to delegate will have to let the clerk's office know probably by noon on the Friday before. Okay, so do we have any regrets, Madam Secretary?
Mr. Chairman, regrets are received from Carrie Colburn.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest with respect to any items before us today? Okay, thank you. The next item is the confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting, which were circulated. Are there any comments on these minutes? Can I have a motion, please? Thank you, Daniela. We have a motion to approve the minutes as circulated. Anyone opposed to that motion?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Yes?
Actually, Daniela was not present at the last meeting, so it really should be a mover that was present.
You're absolutely right. I was happy to see Daniela, though, because we've got an item to deal with respect to Daniela with great regret. But anyway, we'll get her to move another motion and get her name in the minutes for another reason today. George, I saw your hand go up, so if you're prepared to move that motion, that will be good. So the motion has been regularly proposed. Anyone opposed to that motion? Seeing none, the motion is carried. Okay. The first discussion item for today is item 4.1, which is a heritage permit application for 183 Reynolds Street. And David, I think this is yours.
That's right. Good morning. Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just wait for the presentation to pop up. There it is. Okay, great. So this is a heritage permit application for the property at 183 Reynolds Street. Next slide, please. The property is located on the east side of Reynolds Street, just south of Palmer Avenue and north of Sumner Avenue. Next slide, please. It is, the property is designated as part of the Trafalgar Road Heritage Conservation District. It contains a 1919 vernacular 2-story stucco-clad house and a detached 1.5-story detached garage that was built in the late 1970s, so does not represent a significant heritage value. So the proposal before us today has a few different elements. First, it is to construct a new 2-story addition to the rear of the existing heritage home. Secondly, to replace the existing detached garage with a new 2-story garage with living space on the 2nd floor and with a covered walkway roof linked to the rear addition. Third, to replace the non-historic vinyl windows in the front and rear elevations with new wood windows, and to create new window openings on the front and north elevations while slightly moving one window opening on the 2nd story of the front elevation. Next slide, please. So here are a few pictures of the home's front elevation. And you can see a spruce tree that's growing in front of the south side of the front elevation that is proposed to be removed as it's growing very near to the house and really tends to dominate the view towards the house. Next slide, please. Here are two closer up pictures of two of the windows in the front facade. So these are the modern vinyl replacement windows that are those that are to be replaced, along with all the other ones on the front elevation. So again, they'll be replaced with wood windows that will maintain the same divided light profile as the existing windows. Next slide, please. This is just a photo giving you an idea how close the tree is growing up to the house. So it's really brushing up against the front of the house, and again blocks the views from the street to this part of the front. Next slide, please. So this is going to the back of the house, looking towards the rear. Similar to the front, all windows in this elevation are modern vinyl replacements. The mudroom on the ground story and the shed dormer were added in the mid-1970s, and they are proposed to be removed to accommodate the new rear addition. Additionally, the tree on the right side of the frame is also proposed to be removed to accommodate the addition, as the addition will extend back into the location of where the tree currently is situated. Next slide, please. This is just a photo of the front of the existing detached garage that was built again in the late 1970s and is proposed to be removed. Next slide, please. Here are two photos, well, a photo of the rear and of that same garage, and a little bit of the north part of the rear part of the garage as well. You can also see in the photo on the right, the neighboring property to the south and their coach house that's located further back on the south of their property. So the area of the neighboring property where the proposed garage is to be built is open yard space. Next slide, please. So here are two photos from the front that show a little bit more of the immediate context of the area from the street. So the photo on the left is from the north, that's showing a view looking to the south towards the subject property. And the photo on the right is from the south and looking north towards the subject property. Next slide, please. So here is a site plan that was submitted by the applicant. And so it shows a proposed rear addition extending off the north half of the back of the heritage home and the proposed garage on the south side of the property behind the house, that existing home. The front of the garage is located approximately 30 meters from the street, which is also a few meters further back on the property from where the current garage is actually located. You can also see there's extensive distance from the rear of the proposed garage to the rear lot line, as this is a very long lot. Next slide, please. So here is the image of the ground floor plan submitted. On the left-hand side that's highlighted, you can see the proposed garage with a storage area at the back and a internal stairwell located on its south side. And on the right side that's highlighted, you can see the proposed new rear addition that's proposed off the rear of existing heritage home. Next slide, please. This is the second story plan showing the living space of the garage highlighted on the left-hand side, and also the second story of the rear addition highlighted on the right. Next slide, please. Here is the front elevation showing the proposed new wood windows that are set to replace the existing vinyl windows while still retaining a divided light profile. One new window opening is proposed above the front door on the second story, and the south window opening on the second story is proposed to be infilled, and a new window opening will be created and shifted slightly to the south. So it'll be directly above the ground story bay window. And to the right of the image or of the drawing and set back from the house is the proposed new garage with its front gable, wood siding, and a centered window above the garage door. Next slide, please. So at the top of the slide, you can see the south elevation drawing that shows the addition off the rear of the heritage home. The addition's windows and doors are proposed to be aluminum clad wood, and the cladding is proposed to be wood siding. The proposed garage is shown to the right of the addition on that drawing, and along with the a covered walkway link that connects the garage to the rear of the new addition. And at the bottom of the slide, you can see the north elevation of the addition and also one proposed new window opening at the rear of the second story of the existing home. The garage with an internal stairwell and dormer projection on its north side is shown on the left of the north elevation drawing. Next slide, please. This is the rear elevation that shows the proposed addition. The existing stucco wall of the heritage home will be retained on the south side of the rear elevation, while new wood windows will replace the existing vinyl windows on this section of the heritage home. The new addition is shown on the right-hand side of this elevation drawing. So it will have aluminum-clad wood entry doors on the ground floor and windows of a similar material on the second story. The addition has a rear gable form that is set perpendicular to the side gable roof of the heritage home. Next slide, please. So here is the rear elevation of the proposed new garage that shows its relationship and massing relative to the house. It has a rear gable roof similar to that proposed for the addition and a centered second floor window that reflects the design of the proposed front garage elevation. The stairwell projection and dormer that faces the open side yard can be seen on the right of the garage. Next slide, please. So in terms of the heritage assessment of the proposal doesn't involve the removal of any significant heritage attributes. So the rear addition will involve the removal of the existing rear roof dormer and the mudroom addition that were built in the mid-1970s. The area of the rear wall upon which the addition will be added does not contain heritage attributes, and all existing windows to be replaced on the home's front and rear elevations are modern replacement windows. And additionally, the existing detached garage was built in the late 1970s and is not a heritage attribute. The rear addition is designed to minimize its impact on the street and largely will not be visible from street view as it is stepped in significantly from the home's south wall, and it only minimally projects from the home's north side wall. The addition's rear gabled roof form helps to reduce the overall second story mass and both distinguishes the addition from the existing heritage home and also while being compatible with the home's existing side gable roof. And therefore the addition really does not tend to dominate the existing heritage home. In terms of materials, the proposed wood siding is compatible with the home stucco cladding and with the character of the district, as are the aluminum clad wood windows on the addition and the proposed new wood windows on the heritage home. So both are appropriate for the respective locations on the house. As for the garage, it is significantly set back from the street, so about 30 meters, and a large portion of its width will be tucked in behind the heritage house, so not visible from the street. While the length of the garage is directed mostly towards the long rear yard of the property, and away from any buildings both on the subject property or on neighboring lots. The front parts that faces the street has a simplified front gable form, while its north side has a more contemporary asymmetrical stairwell and dormer form that will partially blend in with a larger form of the garage, with having the same wood siding as the rest of the rest of the garage. And also it will be hidden from the street as it faces the open yard on the north side and behind the house. So altogether, the proposed rear addition, proposed garage, and new windows are complementary to the house and conform to the guidelines for new construction and alterations in the district plan. And finally, no minor variances were required for the proposal, though for the tree removal, the applicant would be required to obtain a tree removal permit from the town. Next slide, please. So in terms of the staff recommendation, it's recommended that this heritage permit application be approved, subject to the final details and cladding materials, windows, and doors be submitted to heritage planning staff for final approval, and that this heritage permit expire 2 years from the date of final approval by council. And so that concludes my presentation. I believe both the applicant and owner are here. They can help answer any questions, and I can help answer any questions you may have as well. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Are there any questions of David? Okay, now we have a registered delegation, Daniel from Gren Weiss, and I think Mary, who's the owner. Would either of you wish to add anything to David's presentation? Have you got contact with them, Joel?
Oh, nothing to add from my end. Gren Weiss Architect and myself tend to agree with David's assessment that the application conforms to the heritage standards that we're seeking to meet. And I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, good. So stand by. Does anyone have any questions to ask of Daniel? Daniela.
Hi, thank you, everybody. It's actually a really sympathetic addition, I think. I just had one question about the front door, actually. I think the original, I don't know if it's an original door or what the history around that front door, but I think it's a solid wood door. And I believe in the drawings, it looks like a more updated kind of, it has the lights, divided lights. And I'm just wondering how, if you feel that will change the kind of the streetscape, not the street, sorry, the curb appeal, the feeling around the street. Because I think, I just wanted to ask about that, whether you think that's very change.
For sure. So the intention right now is not to replace that door. If anything, I believe the only remediation that we'd be seeking to do would be to repaint it. I know that there's also a storm door that's present there that I don't know if it's shown 100% accurately in that elevation, but David's pictures should be able to illustrate more what's happening there, because you're correct, it is a solid wood door behind, but there is a storm door that was added at some point over the years on top of that existing wood door. So
Great, thank you.
yeah, no problem.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, no, right. Thank you very much. We're now confined to the board. Anyone got anything to add? No? So if we're all happy, would somebody like to give me a motion? Daniela, thank you. So Daniela has moved the staff recommendation. Any further discussion on that motion? Is there anyone opposed to that motion? Seeing none, the motion is carried. So thank you very much, everybody. That's item 4.1. And that recommendation will go, as we said before, to the Planning and Development Council meeting. The next item is 4.2, which is an application for 46 2nd Street. And I think it's Carolyn who's up on this one.
Yes, that's correct.
Off you go, Carolyn.
Okay. So this is for the property at 46 2nd Street. A photo of the existing house is here. Next slide, please. The property is located in the 1st and 2nd Street Heritage Conservation District. It's on the west side of 2nd Street between Union Street and the lake, and you can see it highlighted there. Next slide, please. So again, it's designated as part of the Heritage Conservation District, but it contains a non-contributing house. So the property has been identified as a non-contributing property. It's a 1977, it says 2-story, it's really more 1.5-story house with attached garage. The current application is to demolish the house and attached garage and to construct a new 2-story house with attached garage. Next slide, please. So again, just a couple of photos of the existing house. You can see here, it's a smaller frame house, again, built in the 1970s. It was recently cleaned up in terms of the trees and foliage on the front. If you go to the next slide, it can show what it's looked like for many years. So if you're not familiar with the house looking at the photo, you may be more familiar with this. For a long time, there were shrubs and trees that hid the house from view from the street. Next slide, please. So here's a site plan showing the proposed new house in darker gray. You can see it's been located on the site so that it fits in with the setbacks of the existing houses to the north and to the south. So it's just fitting in right between. The driveway would be in the exact same place, but widened a bit since this has a 2-car garage on the proposed house. And there will be some trees removed and bushes in the back. They are, for the most part, just smaller bushes. And I believe there's one sort of fruit tree in the middle. They're not larger trees. The existing trees along the property line at the front and the sides will be retained. You can also see behind the house, there is a covered porch and a lighter shaded gray area. Go to the next slide. Here's a view of the proposed house from the front. So it's a 2-story brick home with a wing to the south, which would be a board and batten frame wing. This is the garage portion, which as required by the district plan, it has a lower roof lines and is pushed back from the front to the brick portion of the house. So it's a fairly traditional design, symmetrical view from the front in terms of the main portion of the house with 2 brick chimneys, 2 dormers in the roof as well. And if you go around to the next side, we can see the side view. This is looking at the property from the south. So to the right, you can see the board and batten portion. This is where the garage is proposed. All windows are to be aluminum clad wood windows. They're all multi-paned windows, the traditional look. As you can see on the left side, at the rear of the property, there is a covered porch area. Next slide, please. And this is the rear view portion showing the brick walls again, the covered porch, dormers in the window. Again, the more traditional look is still maintained on the rear yard with more glazing, but still keeping the multi-paned windows. Next slide. And then this is the north elevation. So again, the brick portion of the house with the windows down the stairwell in the center, and that portion is pushed in. So creating some articulation on that wall. And again, you can see the covered porch to the rear. Next slide. Here's a streetscape view as required for new homes within the district. So you can see the house has been designed with a height that is about halfway between the 2 existing houses to the north and to the south. So the house on the right in this image is to the north. That is a historic early 20th century brick home. And the one to the south is a more contemporary 2-story red brick home. So the idea was for it to sort of fit into this landscape by matching the existing conditions in terms of setbacks of the houses and the heights. So the house sort of fits in a little bit in between in both cases. And you can see again, the left-hand side, the garage portion, which is lower than the rest of the house, which is the same as has been done on the 2 houses to the north and to the south. Next slide, please. The owners have not finalized their colors in terms of brick. They're showing red brick and I believe a gray siding. This is showing more as a black in this image. These are colors that could come to staff for final approval. The owners, I know at one point we're also considering a buff brick, a lighter colored brick. But either way, staff would want to see something that's more traditionally used, like the red brick or buff brick. But this rendering does give a good view of the house in terms of its proportions and how it would sit on the lot. Next slide, please. In terms of the heritage assessment, there was one minor variance that was required for lot coverage. The maximum lot coverage for the site is 25% under the zoning bylaw, and they did receive approval recently for 27.7%. The portion of the building, which is the house, still remains under 25%. And the rear covered porch does push it up to 27.7. So as we've shown, the house is a very traditional design with hip roofs, dormers, chimneys. The materials that are being proposed are fairly traditional: red brick, board and batten siding, multi-paned windows. Again, the garage is set back from the front elevation of the house and has a lower roof line than the rest of the main portion of the house. The height is consistent with the neighboring houses. And overall, the house is considered to be compatible with the Heritage Conservation District guidelines, but it's also distinguishable from the surrounding heritage properties. Next slide, please. So the staff recommendation is that the application for the demolition of the existing house and the construction of a new house be approved, subject to the following: that final details on the windows, doors, and cladding material, including color, and again, that's in regards to the brick and the siding, be submitted to Heritage Planning staff for final approval. And I'd be happy to answer questions. And I believe we have the applicant here as well.
Thank you, Carolyn. Does anyone have any questions to ask of Carolyn? Yes, Daniela.
Thanks, Carolyn. I was just, the one question I had, and I can't tell by the drawing, but the second story windows, is there space between them and that roof line? It looks really tight from the top of the window to the kind of eaves, the soffit and eaves. I just know around town, you see sometimes when that spacing isn't respected, it can feel a bit off, but I can't tell if that's, and then the other thing is, the first story, the main story, has that brick detailing, like the horizontal brick detailing above. Is that mimicked above the second story windows? And again, just wondering about the spacing.
So through you, Mr. Chair, to Daniela, yeah, there is, if you look, I would have to bring the slide up. I'm looking at the image. I'm not sure which page it is. It's on the agenda. Yeah, if we could go back a few slides more until we get to the drawing. So two more, yeah, one more here. So you can see, I think the vertical bricks, is that what you're speaking about, Daniela? The vertical bricks above the windows?
Yeah, but it just looks like they hit right up against the soffit as opposed to mimicking the detailing on the first floor bricks, which is the more traditional look. So it's just, I'm just wondering if there's space, like, is there the appropriate amount of space between the upper floor windows and the soffit? I'm just, because I'm sure all of us have seen those houses where the top windows are squished right up against the roof line. And I can't tell if that's this case.
Yeah, so there is, what they've done, instead of doing individual, the vertical headers above each individual window on the second floor, they've done just a band across the top. And maybe the applicant can speak to this in more detail, but that is the space they have there. I think the idea with this building is that there is no attic actually internally, but that those dormers, there's actually a larger ceiling height in the second floor, so that those dormers actually provide light into the second floor. So I think that's probably why it's been designed that way. We can also have the applicants maybe speak to it a little bit more detail, but what you see there in terms of that brick spacing with those headers, it's sort of one long band instead of individual headers. That's the space that they're proposing.
But are you, okay, so are you comfortable with that amount of spacing aesthetically compared to other heritage homes, which tend to have more space between the top floor and the roof? But that's all I'm saying. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have any significant concerns. I mean, again, with the newer houses, we do like things to be fitting into the Heritage Conservation District, but new homes don't have to match everything exactly as, a traditional home would do it. I hear what you're saying in terms of proportions. I mean, proportions are important to us, but they don't have to mimic exactly what you would see in a typical, let's say, Georgian brick house. From our perspective, we don't have any concerns with it. Again, if the applicants have anything, to add to it, just to kind of explain. But from a staff perspective, we're okay with what they're proposing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of Carolyn? Okay, good. So I see both Emily and John. So,
Mr. Chair, I believe George would like to speak, and Brenda.
George? Okay, just George. George?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Carolyn. I think in your presentation, Carolyn, you spoke of the change in the the shrubbery in front and the hedging to clean out what's shown in our page 39, I guess. Are all those trees going to remain? I heard you talk about trees, but I'm not sure.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to George, and we can have the applicants confirm this, but the existing trees are still showing on the site plan, I believe. I think
really,
they're, but we could have them confirm. The ones I was speaking to there is, I think it's a fruit tree in the middle of the backyard. It's a smaller tree. It's not a significant tree. That will be removed, and a couple shrubs to accommodate the house itself. But I do see some of the existing ones at the front. Again, some of them were just a lot of it shrubs and overgrowth, so they wouldn't maybe show up on a site plan anyway because they're quite small. But I could hopefully have the applicants confirm that just in terms of the trees along the street view.
Okay, thank you. That's just because the existing house picture on page 39 shows all the trees. So I'm just interested to know how many would remain. Hopefully all of them.
Okay.
But it would keep the streetscape somewhat the way it was when you look, especially when you look to the east side. It keeps it more more traditional treescape. Thank you.
Okay, good. And all the shrubbery is already gone. I mean, that had been cleaned out before. Yeah, okay. Okay, any other questions? And I'm looking all the way across the screen. I don't see anyone else. Okay, good. Emily, John, would you like to add and perhaps deal with that question, the two questions that I had?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Just to start off with the trees, we are taking down the one tree at the moment, the one that is quite close to the driveway, and that's just to widen it a little bit because right now it is less than 3 meters. And as you can see, a lot of those trees are shared trees, but right now we are confirming it with the surveyor and the arborist whether they're trees that could remain. But at the moment, this is something that we would be dealing with the arborist and the DSP application. And as well as you can see, there are trees in the back, and you had talked about that as well. So only the trees right now that are required because of the development and the excavation, those are the trees that need to come down. The other discussion that you had is the frieze just below the soffit. Right now we are proposing it to be a frieze detail in brick. And also the reason with the dormer is that is to bring in some light, and as Carolyn had mentioned, it's not a third story, but that we're trying to bring in some light. And as well, it's just to keep the proportion down so that we are not, we can't raise the ceiling at this point, and we don't want to, or the roof line, I should say. And just to bring in a point, just a background here, when we first started, we had the roof line at almost at the 10 meters, I think, is that how we had it, John? And so we had brought it back after discussions with the pre-consult members during the pre-consult stage, and that I think we successfully brought it down to almost 2.5 feet. And so we feel this, the proportion now is something that we are quite comfortable with. Anything to add, John? Or?
I'm just going to add that the soldier course frieze is something that we think gives it a little bit of detail without being ornate, and allows that roof line to stay at an appropriate scale for the context of the two adjacent houses. So that's why we came up with that detail versus something that had crown and whatnot. So that you would see in a more historic house.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer all the questions? Does anyone have any other questions to ask? No? Nope. Good. Okay, thank you very much. So we're now confined to the board. Any discussion? Jerry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I think that all the changes that we see today from the previous application are all positive. I really think that the chimneys are successful and nicely done. And the color of the garage portion darker, which allows that whole wing of the house to recede and not be prominent on the front facade. Taking a cue from the house northwest to it. Overall, I think that there's been a lot of improvement to the previous application. And I would say that as we see the application today, the color of the brick and the color of the garage are really successful, so that it would be nice to keep it as close as possible to how we see it in the presentation. And I think the details are very nicely done. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jerry. Any other discussion? Okay, would somebody like to give me a motion? I can see Brenda. So Brenda's given us a motion to accept the staff recommendation. Any further discussion on that? Anyone opposed to the motion? Seeing none, the motion is carried and we recommend the approval. Thank you very much, everybody. So the next item is 4.3, the Heritage Grant Program, and that's Sue. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am happy to take you through a brief presentation about this year's grant program and how how the reviewing committee is recommending that the funding be spent this year. On our title slide here, you can see the Merrick Thomas House, which is one of the applications for this year for a cedar roof replacement, which is greatly needed, as you can see by the moss growing on the roof here. Next slide, please. And so this is the 9th year of the Heritage Grant Program. I think most of the committee members will agree with me when I say that this program has been a tremendous success since its inception as a 3-year pilot program and then being picked up by council full time. We are tremendously grateful for the increase in budget this year, having gone from $90,000 last year to a new budget amount of $120,000, which is fantastic, given that the program is always oversubscribed. This year, we also had some additional funds coming from previous grant years, unused funding. There were actually a number of property owners who moved without using their funding, so that's why we have that number available. And as per the council motion a few years ago, it's just rolled back into the program so that we can actually make sure that it is spent on heritage conservation projects. So this year we received 32 applications. In total, that's over $244,000 in funding requested. And so even with our additional bonus there of 26,000, we still, obviously come up a little bit short. And so it's always a tough call going through the applications, but my thanks go out to the reviewing committee who joined us to go through all of the applications. Out of the 32 projects that were proposed, we're recommending that 31 of those projects receive funding. Obviously, our priority restoration projects are always structural. And from there, we kind of go to the projects that see conservation of exterior systems, including windows and roofs. And these are always in accordance with our accepted best practices for heritage conservation. So over the past 9 years, we've provided over $820,000 in grants for more than 170 conservation projects that come out being worth more than $4 million. And so this is, I think, a tremendously successful program. Next slide, please. So our evaluation working group met on March 29th over Zoom. As per usual, we do try to spread the funding as widely as possible, but of course, we do tend to recommend a higher percentage of requested funding for structural projects. So those can include repairs to foundations, preservation of the superstructure of the building. And so that's, again, we're talking about exterior wall systems, whether they be masonry or stucco or wood cladding, as well as cedar roofing. Restoration of historic windows is always a big seller for the Heritage Grant Program, because if we do require property owners to maintain their historic wood windows, it's really important that we can provide funding for them. And as well, this year, we also had some applications for cultural heritage landscape features and trees. And so the photo in this slide is actually the fencing, wrought iron fencing at Knox 16 Church, which is designated as a heritage attribute as part of that cultural heritage landscape. Next slide, please. So I'll just quickly quickly take you through a couple of photos from some of our applications, some of our more interesting projects. This, I think, is going to be a tremendous project. This is a property on Lakeshore Road in the downtown Oakville Heritage Conservation District, which they are proposing to remove the modern stucco cladding and try to bring it back to restore the masonry elevation, which would be absolutely tremendous. And so this is one of the larger funding recommendations for this year. Next slide, please. And so here we actually have the steeple at St. Andrew's Church. I'm not sure, this I believe actually was a video. I'm not sure if our IT staff can actually make that into a video. Or sorry, click on play. Maybe it doesn't load up in Zoom. My apologies. It is drone footage actually that's been captured of the steeple at St. Andrews that takes you around the entire steeple. And so this is one of the projects, again, that we've recommended for a higher percentage of funding for this important heritage building within the Old Oakville Heritage Conservation District. Next slide, please. And here we've got some masonry restoration work for one of our newly designated churches, and we're very happy to see the application come in for this one. So yes, we're recommending funding for the restoration of, you can see some of the spalling and issues with the mortar joints and the masonry here. Next slide, please. And I noted that we also had a couple of applications for trees this year. And so this is, actually, we've got 2 tree applications, which are recommended for funding because we are obviously, I think, becoming increasingly aware of the importance of trees within our heritage conservation districts and how important they are, but also the importance of maintaining and assisting, I guess, with the maintenance of these trees, especially when they start growing too close to our designated homes. And so in the photo on the left, I believe that's 38 Burnett Street, and we can see a rather significant crack coming in this tree, unfortunately, and it is threatening the heritage building. And then the other photo is, I believe, on Trafalgar Road. And so we are recommending some funding support to help maintain both the heritage structures on these properties as well as the tree so that we can assist them with their arborist works. Next slide, please. And so the staff recommendation is that the 2022 funding allotments that are attached in your Appendix A, which is the recommended grant projects and the maximum approved amounts to this report, be endorsed. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Sue. The staff put an awful lot of work into preparing for the subcommittee to meet and to do the analysis of these things. And we really appreciate the work that they do, especially over the difficult conditions that we had just leading up to this, partly with Carolyn. It's great to see her back after her concussion, and Sue and Carolyn have all been at hearings or preparing for hearings that may or may not have happened. So our thanks to them for all the work that they've done. So for any of the others who weren't part of that process, have you any questions to ask of us about this? It really is a great program, and it's I'm sure people would try to do the right thing anyway to maintain their homes, but this little bit of encouragement and a little bit of a recognition that it does cost a little more to do the right thing when it comes to dealing with heritage homes or homes in heritage districts. Councillor Gittings, did you want to add to something?
Thank you, Chair Drew. Yes, it seems like a very long time ago in some ways, back in what, 2014, that Councillor Duddick and I spoke about what was then the proposed pilot for this project. And I think over the past 8-9 years, it shows that the foresight at the time in terms of putting back into the properties, you know, you look through this list today and the work that's being done and what it will do to save the properties that are taking advantage of it. I think we look back at the decision from a number of years ago, and it's done everything that we possibly had hoped for. The addition of the injection of additional funds, as well as the money, that, as you mentioned, Chair, that was unspent. It certainly meant that we were able to make a big bang this year. So I'd just like to thank staff and Brenda and Jerry and George, and of course, Chair Drew, for the time that you spent going through this. I think we all appreciate and understand the amount of detail that goes into all of the projects and the ranking system and the rich discussions that we had. So I'd just like to thank everybody, and here's to many, many more years of the same project. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or discussion on this? Councillor Duddock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just building on what my colleague has just said, I just sent a note off to Sue, copying my colleague, asking if we can get a summary of some of those facts that she provided the committee this morning regarding how much was spent, how many applications. It's really important to not only bring that back to sort of raise the issue with council, but also with the public in terms of what is being reinvested in these heritage homes. And I appreciate your comment this morning, Mr. Chair, about the tree, because when I saw 38 Burnett, I sort of thought, okay, emergency tree. But then when I looked at the picture, I thought, good grief, you know, right over top of the house. And then the picture that Sue provided today really sort of hit home as to the necessity for emergency support. The other thing I think is so encouraging, and this is largely due to Sue's efforts with Knox on the 16, they're still doing more and more work every year to maintain and improve the condition of the property. And I think this is a beautiful arrangement, such that they're now moving outside doing the gates for the cemetery. So as I say, it's a win-win for everyone and much appreciated, and great work by staff. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Okay, any further comments? Would somebody like to give me a motion then? Thank you, Bob. So Bob has moved that the staff recommendation is that we endorse this. Is that the word we used? Be endorsed, that's right. So we endorse this report and we recommend it to council, and I'm sure there will be no difficulty there, but I do agree that communication of this program is good amongst your fellow council members so that they understand what's happening. And just looking at the amount of money that was spent by homeowners in there, I mean, that's a lot of money that they're spending to maintain these heritage properties and to the enhancement of the town in general. Okay, so we have a motion. Is there anyone opposed to that motion? Seeing none, the motion is carried. So thank you very much, everybody. 4.4. Daniela has threatened to resign three times last year. We managed to keep her going with the threat that we might actually be getting sticky buns because we might be meeting in person, or we might actually have been able to get down to the Queen's Head and have our Christmas lunch. So she stayed on for that. But I think she's looking at the numbers and has decided that really she can't stay on much longer. But we note your decision to resign, Daniela, with great regret. And we know it'll be for good and valid reasons. And I promise to let you know if and when we actually get to the Queen's Head, so that if you can come and join us, you will do so.
Well, thank you, Drew. No, I would love to stay. I have just my schedule and family commitments have just piled on, and I just can't make it work. So I really love this committee, and I've loved my time with all of you. I wish we were seeing each other in person, but it's been a great opportunity and experience. And it's really important. I mean, I really believe in this mandate of this committee, and also the importance of sustaining heritage properties and just the beautification of Oakville. So I was actually going to say one thing, and it just something that kind of came up quite a few years ago. Some of those towns in the U.S. actually discount property tax for heritage properties, and I just think that's something we should continue to. I know it's not the committee's mandate, but I think it's something that should just be considered, and kind of advocated for, because I think the idea of these properties, the understanding of their value to the community, and also the supporting property values, because of it allows people to want these properties, to sustain these properties. So I just thought I kind of had that idea triggered again. And I would love to think that that's something that is at least still, talked about every once in a while, because it would be great if that ever happened in Oakville. But anyways, thank you all very much. It's been a pleasure, and I'm really sorry to leave.
Thank you, Daniela. We'll miss you. Now, somebody has to actually move that we accept that. Okay. I'll accept. Okay, Councillor Duddock, I'll accept your thumbs down as that with regret. You're moving that we accept the resignation. Is there anybody opposed to that? Well, we're all opposed to it, but for the purposes of the process, is there anyone opposed to that motion? Seeing none, you are resigned, Daniela. And it's a good comment about an ongoing support. And one of the big things, I don't know if you found it in your house, but insurance. And 3 years ago, my insurance company decided, oh, this is the second insurance company that's done this to me. Heritage, no, don't want to touch it, you're gone. Yeah. So we had to go to market. So I'm paying now 3 times what I used to pay on an annual basis 3 years ago. So, I mean, that's just an ongoing cost. I don't have to be trying to improve the building. It's just an ongoing cost of having a Part 4 designated house, or even in a district. So anyway, that said, thank you again, Daniela. We have no other information items. The date and time of our next meeting is May the 24th, which must be awfully close to the long weekend, but I guess it's not. And May the 24th, and it's a virtual meeting again, I imagine. So if I can have a motion to adjourn. George, good, got it. So nobody will be opposed to that. So the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you again, everybody, for the gift of your time. And thank you again, Daniela.
Thank you all. Good to see you.
Happy Easter too. Happy Easter.
Yeah, definitely. I would like to come to the Queen.
Great.